on October 20th. That's when I had the preview episode. So I teased a little bit of this retrograde, but the actual retrograde goes into effect on November 9th at 2:02 p.m. Eastern Time. And that is when Mercury reaches 6 degrees of Sagittarius. So as happens with a Mercury retrograde or with any planetary retrograde, we have a starting point, we have an ending point. And in this case, the starting point, which is the ending point at the same time, and the starting point, which is the ending point at the same time, we have 20 degrees of Scorpio and 6 degrees of Sagittarius. So the pre-shadow starting point and the stationing direct starting point is the 20 degrees of Scorpio. And then we have the starting point of the retrograde and the ending point of the post-shadow period, which is 6 degrees of Sagittarius. So we have 4 dates, and then they're at 2 different degree points. Everything else in between is either retrograde motion or direct motion. But all activity between those degree points is part of the retrograde. I'm going to back it up just to explain more of the retrograde in case you are new to this, you're not familiar. Obviously, Mercury retrogrades have a reputation, and in some ways deservedly so, but also there's a lot of misconceptions around them. So for a retrograde in general, for any planet that retrogrades, which is every planet, every celestial body, except for the sun and the moon, the luminaries do not retrograde. Everything else, fair game. And their retrograde cycles are different lengths, different frequencies, different cadences. When a planet stations retrograde, this is these re-words. So retro, reclaiming, recalling, revisiting, revising, recalibrating, etc. Retrogrades are an opportunity for healing. The reputation that Mercury retrogrades have, which is the one that most people know about, is often viewed as negative. Like, oh my gosh, everything's going wrong. Mercury must be retrograde. Well, for some things, sure, we could relate it to a Mercury retrograde, but not for everything. We are in the time of year where we have a lot of planets that are retrograde. I will be talking about Jupiter retrograde after this. And when certain things are quote unquote going wrong, it's not just because of a certain retrograde. There's so many that are happening, and they're playing on different areas of our chart, different components and essences of who we are. So for Mercury retrograde in particular, because Mercury rules the mind, thoughts, communication, travel, technology, they are known for misspelling, misspeaking, miscommunication, misplacing things, missed connections, mistakes. And when we have this in Sagittarius, so reminder, we have a Sagittarius leg, because it's those 6 degrees, 7. And then we have the Scorpio leg, which is the 9, 10 degrees. So this is going to be experienced in 2 different parts of our chart. Depending on the house system that we're using, this may be 1, 2, 3 different houses contained within these degree points. So you want to look, and again, I'm going to rattle them off again. But you want to look to see what's contained in there, because Mercury has already been running over them, and it's going to be backing up and then going to be running over them again. So in Sagittarius, for this Mercury retrograde, we can expect a review of our belief system, Sagittarius, big picture, religion, spirituality, etc. What we've learned recently. And by recently, I mean like within this shadow period. So going back to October 21st. So what have we been learning recently? And questioning, like, have we been running into any self-limiting narratives? So because Mercury is the mind, it's going to be what's our thought patterns. And for Sagittarius is expansive. It's big picture. It wants to grow. It wants to wonder. So with it being retrograde, it's like, have we been limiting ourselves? Have we been putting boundaries mentally with what we could dream up, what we could do, what we are interested in? And then finally, we may just start asking more profound questions, because we're in the reflection space. When we get to November 18th, that's when Mercury will retrograde into Scorpio and we'll have the little Scorpio leg. And during that period of time, we can expect our attention, because again, Mercury is the mind, so our focus, what we are paying attention to pivot to our subconscious patterns, reflecting on any dysfunctional self-talk, any fears that we have, and our intuitive potential. So as you can see, just the themes of those two signs are very, very different in what it is that we're thinking about, what it is that we're reflecting on. And then below that, you have which houses they're in, which maps them further, details them further. So let's quickly go through the full timeline, and then I'll have you share which houses you have from, again, 20 degrees of Scorpio to 29 degrees of Scorpio, and then 0 degrees of Sagittarius through 6 degrees of Sagittarius. That's what you want to look at, which houses are in there. And you will have likely multiple houses in there. So here's the full timeline of this retrograde season. The final Mercury retrograde, the third and final of 2025. Don't worry, we'll have more next year. So the pre-shadow began at 20 degrees of Scorpio on October 21st. Then Mercury stations retrograde at 6 degrees of Sagittarius on November 9th. It retrogrades, regresses, returns into Scorpio on November 18th, 9 days later. The Mercury cazimi, the high point of the Mercury retrograde cycle, the day that we could plan for, circle on our calendar, be excited about, because it's the day where we will have clarity. Rather than our mind being in the retrograde motion and confusion and the misspellings and all that other stuff, things getting lost, being discombobulated, being tired and out of sorts, that's the day where we can have some clarity, we can have some aha moments, some reflections, good communication, save your very important conversation for that day, your announcement for that day, so that it's not misinterpreted. And that is 2 days after the return to Scorpio. So it's at 28 degrees of Scorpio on November 20th. So November 20th is the Mercury cazimi day, 28 degrees. That's the one that we want to circle as yay, our happy day for this cycle. Then Mercury keeps backing up, stations direct at our starting point, ending point, 20 degrees of Scorpio on November 29th. So now we are reaching the end of the month. And that post-shadow period, so we're at 20 degrees of Scorpio and it has to move forward to clear 6 degrees of Sagittarius. Once it gets past here, we're out of the retrograde. We are just in Mercury forward motion in Sagittarius, thinking about those areas, those topics of life, thinking a little bit bigger, broader, focused on learning, etc., in a way that's allowing us to just move forward. That post-shadow ends on December 16th. So the full start to finish was the pre-shadow began 20 degrees Scorpio on October 21st. And the post-shadow, 6 degrees Sagittarius, ends on December 16th. So we have approximately a 2-month period of time where normally if Mercury is just tra-la-la moving through a sign, it takes 3 weeks. So that's why these retrograde pockets are so important, because we're really deep diving, and we're also deep diving intellectually because that's what Mercury is representing. We're really trying to understand, reflect, get clarity on. It may feel a little bit bumpy along the way. That's why we circle the cazimi day. But this is important work, important reflections. Things may break, but maybe it's because they weren't built properly the first time and we got to fix them. And we'll realize once we clear, once we're on December 16th to 17th, oh, okay, you know what? That actually was better. I'm glad that I had to redo that or had to fix that. And sometimes we just, in the mental fog that is the Mercury retrograde, we can't see it right away. My mom said to me, don't buy electrical items in Mercury retrograde. Okay, so that is interesting because the fact that Mercury oversees, if you will, technology. You buy a lemon essentially, so it might not work. And because the technology could break or malfunction, like a classic thing is even just existing technology you have, it's like your car breaks down. And like, so now you have to get a new car. It's your mode of transportation, Mercury. Your phone dies or something technologically stops working and then it just like resolves itself randomly later. That is really common. That's another reason why some people will say maybe don't travel during a Mercury retrograde. However, um, I view it more as like don't plan the trip, as in don't sit down and like start booking things during the retrograde. But if you booked it in a clear time period, then that's like less of a concern because you booked it when you were of clear mind and it just so happens to be falling during some of it. You could maybe still experience some mishaps, but it would be a much bigger issue if you were scheduling the trip during that time, because then it's much more likely to either go awry in that process or go awry later because it wasn't set up with clarity and all of the pieces properly communicating with each other. Oh my gosh. Okay, so Caitlin, you're having a Mercury return. So you'll be having a so that means this has already happened. So you had Mercury move over your natal Mercury already, probably within the last like week or so. So you had a Mercury return, and then it's going to be a Mercury return, but in retrograde on that Kazemi day. And then it's going to hit it again. So that's another day, like 2 days that you could be circling, and one that you could look back on to say, all right, what came up for you? Did you have any ideas that popped in? Any reflections that popped in? But yeah, that how exciting for you on the 28th or the 28th degree to have that Kazemi day. Carry 8th and 9th, Jupiter and Uranus. Oh my gosh, my tire monitoring stopped working on 3 tires. Yeah, so I mentioned this in the pre-shadow video that you may already be experiencing some of this, and that's because we have to think about it like as if it's a ramp. So we're moving up in intensity as we get to the retrograde, and then we're at the peak intensity. And then in the post shadow, we're at the peak intensity and it starts to dissipate. So because of that, as we get closer and closer, which we're only, as of recording this, we are only 4 days away. So if you already are having mishaps, not surprising. Like for me, as an example, I had on the 31st was when I was traveling. So it's a perfect example. I booked this trip that I went on outside of the retrograde. And then I was traveling during the pre-shadow period. So I wasn't traveling during the retrograde, but the pre-shadow. And my train was delayed in total by over 2 hours. So I arrived at my destination 2 hours after I was supposed to. And the cab driver almost drove off with my bag after I got there. So it was like all of this stuff that was happening. And this was, what, like just under a week ago. So we were picking up, we were already in the pre-shadow, but we were still a whole week out, and I was experiencing some of those things happening. So of course, as it gets closer, it's only going to intensify. So yeah, if you had some sort of an issue with your car popping up, then yeah, that's kind of classic. When Mercury hits Jupiter, you could be thinking about bigger ideas, luck, growth, great for learning, which of course we have a bit in that 9th house as well. And then for Uranus, it could be something that's out of the box, something that is unconventional, a surprise, something that's unexpected. Oh, I didn't realize I was going to think about that, or that was going to come up for me. And this means that your reflection is happening in areas of learning, spirituality, development, long-term career, and what you are known for. What I would be reflecting on is sixth house Sagittarius, so my physical health. So the fact that I have been sitting here talking to all of you about like, oh my gosh, I am so tired and I'm trying to recalibrate my energy and I'm like thinking about that, what are adjustments that I could make? That's all sixth house. And also just I've been having a lot of ideas and reflections around how can I create more balance? How can um, I mentioned this at the beginning because I was like in New York City. What is the lifestyle like there? Okay, you just like pop out and go to these shops and do all these other things. And I don't really do that. So I'm thinking about, and I have been doing this last several days, how can I make adjustments to my day to day, my routine, sixth house, for exploring a little bit more, Sagittarius, learning a little bit more, getting myself outside of my bubble, Sagittarius. So I've already been doing that just as we're like peaking and getting to that point. And then as it moves back and goes into Scorpio, that's my fifth house, then it's thinking about ways that I'm having fun or pleasure, or again, like not working and not being intense, but being intense about fun rather than being intense about work. And those are all themes that I have been engaged with, which should make sense because we've all had Mercury that was moving in direct motion in Scorpio. So if you feel like I've already been thinking about the Scorpio theme, well, you should have been because it was moving in direct motion, went all the way through, and then it's just going to be dipping back. So that will be a repeat for you. And then same thing on the other side. We're getting the preview of a little bit of the Sagittarius energy. It's going to retrograde, and then it's going to return and go through all the rest of the degrees. We're only getting to 6 degrees, and there's 29, 30, but 29, the 29th degree.